What's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. Subscribe to Saturday Down South on YouTube. I'm Connor O'Gara. Week 9 was weird for me personally, and I think just weird across the SEC with the way that it played out. I missed a strange Saturday to not be fully locked in on.
Yeah, it was definitely, a bloody Saturday in the SEC. A lot of people were saying that it was one of the most chaotic kind of early windows of all time. Started to call it the noon window, but I'm on Central Time today, so I guess
Same.
most of the conference experiences this on the 11 o'clock window, which is chaos. To pull up to a sports bar at 11 a.m. feeling like a fiend, did that. That was fun.
Yeah, we're both on Central Time. I am, for those looking at a different background of the YouTube audience, I am at my mom's house in Chicago. And it was definitely strange having that realization of every single thing related to Central Time Zone, which I realize we're talking to probably over half of the audience by saying this. So excuse our negligence for Central Time Zone. But being here when game day is starting at 8 o'clock and then having games start at 11. And then after I leave this wedding, and all the games have already been over for a while. And we left at like probably 10:40, something like that, like 10:30. So we stayed a good amount, but not till 11 o'clock. And yeah, it was very strange kind of being away from it. I caught like an hour and a half to 2 hours worth of live action and then caught up on everything else. But a wild Saturday in the SEC, a lot that I had to get caught up on this morning, did like 3 hours of prep beforehand. And we are good to go for today. But yeah, let's just say I'm not going to poo-poo fall weddings. Had a great time. Got to see my buddy Anthony get married. He probably was the drunkest person at his own wedding. Here's a quick question before we get into actual stuff that matters, Will, because I've been asking people this. Have you ever been to a wedding where the DJ has played multiple songs multiple times, repeated?
Probably not multiple. Maybe like a one or two is like a special request by the bride or groom, but yeah, not like a recurring playlist.
I don't need to hear the wobble twice,
The
Mr.
wobble.
Wedding
I was gonna
DJ.
ask what it was. Okay, so here's the question. To quote Major
And Get
Payne,
Low, Lil Jon,
of course.
was played twice.
To quote
Yeah,
Major Payne, did you cut a little rug?
I always do. You know I do. It's just a question of what are we conserving our energy to do when I'm coming on here and having to speak in the morning. Let's just say I'm not belting out every single word to Don't Stop Believing. We're mouthing, we're lip syncing a few times. We're going full Ashley Simpson. But yeah, we had a good time. We had a great time. It was great to see all my friends. And yeah, was definitely just surreal being away though and not watching college football all day on Saturday.
I'm glad to have you
So
back. Glad to have your face in the place, your feet in the seat. And without further ado, I guess we got to talk about what happened yesterday, don't we, Connor?
yeah, quick word from our friends at Dabble, which those of you who have been listening regularly to this know that Dabble is one of the newest and best apps in the DFS space. They've wasted no time making a name for themselves. The social function, it is second to none. They offer a wide variety of sports making picks, including college football. Maybe you did some of that yesterday, NFL. Maybe you're doing some of that today. Use promo code SDS2 when you sign up today. Receive $25 in bonus cash. No deposit required. Again, that's promo code SDS2 for $25 in bonus cash, courtesy of the good folks at Dabble. Well, should we start with some therapy?
Let's do it.
A&M goes into Death Valley, dominates the second half. First time winning there since 1994. The George H. No, that's Clinton. Clinton administration. My bad. I caught myself. Clinton administration. They say that Death Valley is where dreams go to die. Death Valley is apparently where 8-4 jokes about A&M went to die, because that joke is dead, like for this year at least. And we'll get to the LSU side in a second here. Let's quickly hit on some of the key points for A&M, a team that is just continuing to ascend at the right time. 35 consecutive points from A&M to close this one. I don't know if you knew it was that much. Did it feel like 35 consecutive points, Will?
It felt like 100. I'll be honest with you. I
Yeah.
wasn't partaking in much of the fourth quarter of this game. Didn't really feel a lot of fight in the Brian Kelly team. So I really wanted to watch the competitive part of the game just in case LSU started getting hot at the end, to not lie to myself here. But yeah, it was a million points is what it was.
Yeah, no Whit weeks or not, that's still just an insane thing to have happen against an LSU defense that we've said a lot of really good things about. And everyone had been coming into this week wondering, like, are there just going to be no elite SEC teams? We can just kind of poke holes in all of them. A&M is now starting to very much assert itself as an elite SEC team and an elite team nationally. Just no flinching from A&M after I thought they had some costly mistakes in the first half of that one. And the realization that I think every LSU fan has come to, at least from looking at A&M, is that Marcel Reed owns LSU. Absolutely owns them. Like, can't stop him.
Yeah, I mean, talking about where dreams go to die, I mean, the scene of the A&M fans doing like the back and forth swaying thing that they do, uh, like Marcel Reed will be running through my nightmares. That's exactly
Yep.
when you commit to a school, that is exactly what you hope for, is that not only will the fans of my school be celebrating, but the rivals of my school will be fearing my name. And that's exactly how LSU fans should feel about Marcel Reed, a guy that we often talk about through 2 passes in the second half last year and dominated LSU. And wasn't, perfect by any means in the first half of this game. LSU certainly had a chance, had the lead. But the way that he was able to respond, right? I think that A&M showed a three-phase game here, showed that Marcel Reed was a little bit more than the runner. I think that LSU early let him get going there. They had some success, but then just the floodgates open. And LSU got out physical yet again, and that was led by Marcel Reed, who made a tackle on a pick that he threw. I mean, that is just a tough, mean, gritty Aggies team.
You don't like seeing that all the time from your quarterback. Just let somebody else. Like, I mean, I get it. It happens, but
But who's to
I'm
say
not
what would have happened, right? I mean, if he doesn't make that tackle, if he just kind of does the business decision, Ole, maybe it kind of goes to a different place at halftime at
true.
least. So yeah, I mean, just embodied by that leader, embodied by every member of that team. You saw the like clip of Cassius Howell kind of like screaming. So yeah, I think that A&M's got some dogs, man.
Yeah. Marcel Reed, 13 rushes, 108 yards, couple of scores, just toyed with that defender at the goal line too, which, my
Harold
God, I
Perkins, you
mean,
mean?
I wasn't going to name names. I don't like to do that. You'll notice sometimes if a guy's not as what's a nice way to say this? If a guy has dealt with issues during his career at different points, I don't like to highlight it. Oh, this offensive lineman just got dummied in this game, and he got totally. But Harold Perkins, I should have probably mentioned. Should have probably mentioned Harold Perkins was the defender who got just schooled at the goal line by one Marcel Reed. It will. I think at this point now, if you shut down that guy for 60 minutes, kind of like what Auburn did, you should feel great about yourself because it is darn near impossible. We've seen elite defensive minds this year who have really struggled to contain Marcel Reed. I mean, really struggled. Marcus Freeman struggled to contain him. We just saw Blake Baker, who we consider to be one of the better defensive minds in the sport. Certainly not the best night that he has had, obviously since he joined LSU. But man, like the things that he can do, he has just taken that next step. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It is a complete team. Cassius Howell does not get 3 sacks. He only had 2 in this one, only 2, but 7 sacks. You knew that number was going to be high. And it just feels like LSU just did not really have a chance with all the different things that A&M could do in a game in which they weren't perfect in the first half. And that's why they went into the locker room with the halftime deficit. And they just find ways to keep coming back, and they will just be relentless over the course of 60 minutes. A&M reaching the SEC championship could still come down to that Texas game, depending on how some things play out. But go tell someone in August that this A&M offense would put up 40 plus in South Bend and at LSU. If we had been talking about that in preseason projections, or if like an A&M player said that at SEC media days, like, oh yeah, we think we're going to hang close to half 100 at those 2 places, we would have laughed him out of the building. We would have said, okay, we like the A&M offense, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. And I think it's just remarkable what that unit has done. Great stat on SEC final. First time A&M has scored 30 points in 7 of its first 8 games since the Johnny Manziel era.
Wow.
Anytime you start getting into that territory, that's legit. Remarkable stuff by Colin Klein. Remarkable stuff by Mike Elko, who absolutely needs to be part of these national coach of the year conversations. I realize those are going to be dominated by Signetti, going to be dominated by Clark Lee. He needs to be a part of them. Marcel Reed is a Heisman candidate. Like all of that is legitimate. And we shouldn't rule out the possibility of like him leading A&M to an SEC championship, being the best player on the field, and having like a real path to win the award. Like very much on the table, even though the numbers aren't gaudy. Is that enough on A&M for you to stomach? Do you want to get to the LSU side and how bad it was?
I mean, and guys, like I texted counter this, like I'm not emotional about this. I'm not Mr. Doom and Gloom. I'm not trying to hopium either. I'm kind of right in the middle here, right? And I'll say this was an adapt or die game, apex, right? You
Yep.
look at Elko, who is a Brian Kelly assistant, and the decisions he's made, to really solidify this team over time, to bring in Colin Klein, who we, really liked. And if you're a defensive minded head coach, giving a guy like that autonomy, really takes some humility, right? To say you're smarter than me on that side of the ball, you're going to own this. So yeah, I mean, again, just to put a bow on all this, right? Talking about going back to the Harold Perkins thing, after this game or kind of after that play, I thought to myself, this is a really a testament to Mike Elko. Did Harold Perkins make the wrong college decision when you think about the way that these guys have been developed, okay? Which has been completely flipped on its head. Scott Woodward, of course, hired Jimbo at A&M and also hired Brian Kelly at LSU. And forever, A&M was seen as this place that these big names go to die. You get the 5 stars, and hopefully they survive long enough to get drafted. Now you look at a Marcel Reed, who is a guy that has been an imperfect player. He's been an incomplete player even at times in this game. But the way that A&M has found a way to support him and develop him versus a guy like Harold Perkins, who came in with his hair on fire and has not gotten better. If anything, he's regressed at LSU. So if you're this administration, if you're Brian Kelly, all you have to do is look across the sideline and see what it looks like to have good talent and develop them versus what LSU has done with patching some holes with transfers and not really developing the hometown guys and building that toughness.
And to mention Marcel Reed in that, I think a lot of people forget too that he was committed to Ole Miss until the final week of signing day, and then he ends up flipping from the Lane Kiffin offense to the Jimbo offense, which I think anybody would look at that and go, "Why did that guy do that?" And it ends up working out perfectly for him because Colin Klein comes along after the Mike Elko hire, and now he's in a scheme where, gosh, there aren't too many quarterbacks in college football that look like a better scheme fit than what Marcel Reed is in the Colin Klein offense, and it's worked out perfectly. And we could have been having the same conversations for Harold Perkins had Blake Baker been able to kind of harness all those different things. And instead, it's kind of still this like, man, untapped potential with him. And that's only a small piece of it, obviously, because there are so many other areas that you can pick apart with this LSU defense. But the optics just couldn't be worse. That place clearing out. If you saw the Chris Vanini tweet that went viral, they're singing the fight song, but like not all of the players are even out there. Brian Kelly's not even out there. He gets booed twice because he comes back out. I mean, who could have thought that this would be the team and the season that would unfold after week one, after feeling like, man, this team has really turned the corner. And instead, you can't even hang your hat on the Death Valley at night thing anymore if you're Brian Kelly. And this is just as bad as it could have gotten for this team this year, Will, because they are not only just did they watch one of their former assistants, Brian Kelly, come in here and just drop the hammer on him in the second half in a game in which, he made the better adjustments, but this house of cards that has fallen is probably falling towards 7-5 overall and 3-5 in SEC play because you got a bye week, then you travel to Bama, still have the trip to Oklahoma. This is a 7-5 football team. This is what it looks like.
Totally agree. And it's funny because whenever LSU lost to Vandy, you're like, "Oh, is this the most embarrassing loss of the Brian Kelly era?" And I kind of alluded to like, I think we're kind of just getting started here. And so when you're like, "Hey, this is kind of the farthest they could fall," I think to your point, they could just be getting started here. And how many times have we seen LSU with what we describe as competent coaching go into a bye week and then the Bama game with full of hopium? They come into Bryant Denny Stadium or even at home against Alabama. Every Tiger Stadium stat that they were listing about A&M was like every team but Alabama, every team but Alabama. And so,
Yeah.
point being, that is the one game that I guess you could win it if you're Brian Kelly. Hey, I could play quarterback in that game too, I guess, if we're talking about things that could happen. But but I think both things are about as likely at this point as we sit here, right? So, but that being said, that's the game that I guess could be the only one that could save you if you're Brian Kelly. But in reality, it's always going to be seen as your measuring stick in the SEC. And it's a game that's not even much of, at this point, a rivalry because Georgia has supplanted that. Now A&M has kind of supplanted that. So you're just asking or left with a lot of questions. And if you're LSU, having to play out the rest of this year with that buyout, it's going to be rough.
Having to play out the rest of the year with that buyout is going to be a massive question. Which guys check out? Which guys are already looking ahead at the portal? This is a thing that Brian Kelly, like you thought it was, at least if you're Brian Kelly, you could sell going into the Vandy game or coming out of it. Hey, if we win out, this is what we can still do this year. A 10-2 LSU team could still obviously go to the college football playoff. And now everybody knows that's off the table. And so a team that looked very much just kind of over it is now going to have to coach against that. And that is a difficult thing. It is going to be really, really difficult after you suffer your worst home loss to a non-Alabama team in the 21st century. I mean, that's not even Ed Ogeron had a loss that bad at home to a non-Alabama team. And that's going to sting. It's just going to sting. At this point, if you're guessing, Will, because I've pushed this away, I've said he's going to get a year 5. They're not going to pay that much to fire a head coach this year. Scott Woodward hired Brian Kelly. At this point, bet the house, yes or no? Brian Kelly, year 5. What do you think?
I mean, it's such a difficult situation. We'll have plenty of time, obviously, to discuss this, but the buyout changes December 1st, I believe, a little bit. I think that's a good date to look at. I think there will be changes soon, like probably into this bye week. I think we're looking at least a play calling duty shift, if not a firing there. It's hard to think that they'd keep Brad Davis on the O line with the way that they've played, even with two, freshman tackles playing. You just can't get embarrassed like that at home. So that being said, what it is, honestly, is that I find it hard to believe that LSU will be able to pay a Brian Kelly buyout and do a Scott Woodward style hire, which is he's famous for poaching coaches who are already somewhere that are allegedly happy. And I don't think LSU right now, after donors have just shelled out for this massive transfer portal class, are going to stomach that to say, I'm going to pay this buyout. I'm going to pay the money on like a Lane Kiffin's contract, and I'm going to give Lane Kiffin a contract that is bigger than his current contract to make him leave.
There's a very good chance that when we do our who is in college football hell discussion this offseason, that LSU's in it.
I started co-host of the podcast in hell, and I'm right back there. A little
Yeah,
hell sandwich, but happy to be here. And the SEC has never been a more entertaining product, so whatever.
that's true. That's a good way to look at it. Good way to look at it. And perhaps no better example of that than Alabama, South Carolina. Quite simply, Will, I think Alabama loses this game last year instead of being able to survive in Columbia. I think they lose that game. I think maybe even they lose that game by 2 scores last year, and they just do not make the plays down the stretch to be able to win a very winnable game after everybody in college football is patting them on the back. And instead, they are able to show poise. And I really did not think that Alabama was. How can I say this delicately? When Keon Sabb got hit with the punt return and like the ball deflects off of him and South Carolina takes over, I thought at that moment, okay, we're about to have a whole lot of 2024 conversations about Alabama. And it's this huge play when South Carolina is up 1. And instead of Bama taking over, gives the ball right back to South Carolina, making an 8-point game. Here is my question. Are all of those 2024 Bama conversations happening if South Carolina simply goes for 2 on that play to try and make it a 9-point game instead of just taking the extra point, making it a 22-14 lead? If they just go for 2 in that spot, are we having all of those conversations and go, wow, Bama just did all these great things over the course of the last month, and here they are losing a game that feels so reminiscent of 2024?
I mean, the thing is, I don't really trust South Carolina to convert that, right? Because even
Fair.
those, like, I was joking all day about the Mike Schuler revenge game, and 20-20, it was a little bit of that, especially in the first half. But once they got into those critical situations, and how many times have we talked about like these moments for Alabama, right, where it was in the goal line or in the red zone? You see South Carolina missed a field goal that also could have put them in that same situation.
True.
So it's a classic team that finds ways to win games versus a team that finds a way to lose games.
I still struggle with that thing though of like just go for 2 and make it a 2 possession game. And I know analytics say, well, you need to only go for 1 there because you can't allow the other team to actually have a chance to come back, score once, and then potentially beat you if they want to go for 2. I still think it just changes how teams defend you. I really do. And I just think there would have been something to be said if all of a sudden Bama as the top 5 team is in that spot, in that hostile atmosphere, and they would have just had so much pressure on them. Now, Bama has done a great job handling pressure. I think it's cranked up to a different notch when you're down 2 scores like that. But instead, a poised Ty Simpson leads eventually a game-tying touchdown drive. Deontay Lawson strips Lenora Sellers. Jeremy Bernard gets kind of the Ole touchdown win to be able to, to go ahead late there, where South Carolina basically decided once they get inside the 10-yard line, we kind of have to let them score. And Bama has gone from, and I know I've used this word a lot already, Bama has gone from perhaps the least poised team in college football in 2025, maybe also the most overwhelmed team, to the most battle-tested, poised team in college football in 2025. Like I think that's real. That is so obvious when you see the plays that they make. It is such a drastic mental turnaround because it's not the talent. It's just it looks so mental. Even that decision to go for 6 when it's 4th and goal on the 3. And you just trust Ty Simpson's going to make a play. And you've been talking about this since the Mizzou game. Like they just know that Ty Simpson in that spot, they don't even have to think about it in those like, oh, we're going to kick a field goal, settle for 3. No. Ty Simpson's going to make a play more times than not. He's going to work through his progressions. He's going to trust the scheme. And then Cuevas in the back of the end zone, huge touchdown in that spot. And this is just like what Bama does. And Kalen DeBoer is now 20-7 in one score games as an FBS head coach, which we probably need to bring up whenever we also talk about the record against AP top 25 teams. He's also now 5-5 away from Tuscaloosa at Alabama. So who said he can't win away from home? I never said that.
There you go. Yeah. And again, it's a team that has an innate sense of poise. They have an innate sense of math. And I think just to quickly revisit the 2-point conversion,
Matt.
I did remember this correctly. They had that Nick Harbor bomb 54 yarder, and then they went for two and didn't get it. So I'm sure from St. Bieber's situation, he's like,
Fair.
and so, but that being said, Alabama is the exact opposite of that, right? They have an innate sense of math. They know this is when we take a good risk. This is when, a risk could cost us. And I mean, Ryan Grubb just chef's kiss when he needs to be there. You know what I'm saying? In those moments, yeah, you wish you'd put up 50 points on this Malign South Carolina defense, right? But that's not what college football is about, And I would say in terms of teams you can't kill, it's Alabama. I think A&M is that without the FSU loss, right? So I'm sure A&M fans at this point are saying, "What do we have to do? Go to South Bend, go to Death Valley," as you said. But who is the scariest team in the SEC? I wish those two could play in the SEC championship game. I want to see that game so badly.
Kind of do too. I'm kind of heading towards that, and there's a lot of teams that are going to be part of that conversation as well. Georgia and Ole Miss, who we're going to get to in a bit here, and shoot, for all we know, Vandy's going to be part of the conversation. There are a lot of great matchups that we could see, but it is kind of feeling like in a year in which Bama and A&M aren't playing each other in the regular season, that would be really fun to kind of see these teams go back and forth in a potential SEC championship, because Bama is now 5-0 in SEC play heading into the bye. LSU at home, Oklahoma at home, and then you're at Auburn. Those are your remaining SEC games. Feels like Bama can book the hotels, just book them for Atlanta. Those are ready to go. Perhaps start thinking of winning an SEC title for the fourth time in the 2020s. Like that's entirely on the table with this team. And I don't think anybody would be surprised at this point. You just kind of expect them to make these big time adjustments, and doing so against an unranked team, I think matters for DeBoer. Just not having that letdown and seeing kind of, okay, it's one thing to get up for a game, it's another to you could probably hear it from South Carolina fans with how intense that atmosphere was, especially after Harbor has that touchdown where he gets behind the secondary of like, here you go again. Oh man, just you're not going to find a way. And instead of it being, as you mentioned, a Mike Shula, Toby Keith game, it ends up being kind of just a reminder that Kalen DeBoer, pretty good football coach. Pretty good football coach.
And I'm laughing with you in agreement because it's funny that that's the question mark that Caleb DeBoer still has to check off is can you beat an unranked team, right? And I said after last week's win, like, hey, welcome to the playoff, Alabama. Once Alabama makes the playoff or any postseason environment, again, there are no unranked teams. So it's so funny because all they have to do in my mind is pretty much just stay in the playoff conversation. They could be a team, maybe not this year, but going forward that you would view as a hey, maybe they could miss the SEC championship game and be a little bit better off because they're not scared to, host a playoff game or whatever and take care of business there. So yeah, I think I saw a lot of meltdowns on Bama Twitter, from the SDS account, and I was kind of never there in this game, as funny as it was. I think that college football, especially modern college football, is not about beating unranked teams. It's about beating ranked teams. It's about beating good teams. And I think that Kalen DeBoer has proven he can do that. And so, hate to say you're in cruise control for the rest of the season, but I think a lot of the hay's in the barn for Bama. And a game like this shouldn't, affect your opinion of them because they're a totally different team away from home and against teams that have struggled.
Devastating for South Carolina too, because in my opinion, that's the best football game they played this year. I mean, easily in a lost season, that was not a lost performance at all. Fantastic atmosphere, showed so much more fight than they did in the Oklahoma game, and not just being able to stop the run too. I thought was something that they were going to need to show in this game when you knew Alabama had not really run the ball particularly well, but that was going to be a good indicator of how motivated they were to be able to play in a game that, yeah, isn't going to necessarily send them to a college football playoff or anything like that, what they hoped going into the season, but still a game that meant a lot to that fan base and to those coaches. And
And my heart
Beamer had
breaks
a
for them
chance.
really quick. Did you see the photo of the South Carolina fans about to storm the field?
Oh no, I missed that.
So,
Oh,
like,
that's
they are, like,
bad.
in a puddle, where the guys are all it looks like a concert, and they're all coming to the side, and then, yeah, big germ for 6, and, we're heading to the exits.
Yeah, that's rough. You always have mentioned to me the drafts of tweets you wish you could see for trolls that just never see the light of day. That would be, I'm not saying that's a coffee table book of field storms that never happen. You know what? Actually is. It actually is. There needs to be a photographer somewhere that has just been doing this for like 40 years or something like that. That just compiles a book of field storms that never happened. And it's just fans that are just eagerly awaiting to jump over some hedges or fall into some hedges if it's just Jordan Hare or something like that. Those two fans that always goes viral. But I would watch that. That's sad though. That's really sad.
And I mean,
Ooh.
these fans kind of deserve better, right? Because they brought the atmosphere. And again, these players played their
Yep.
butts off for Beamer. It's just Bama's kind of inevitable sometimes. I can't even really blame South Carolina. Just sometimes you fumble. I hate to say it like that, but sometimes you fumble. Sometimes you have these things go wrong. And South Carolina gets the ball back with a chance to at least take it to overtime. And it's an oddly shaped ball that takes weird bounces sometimes. And that's just kind of how it goes. But I think not going to do hopium, copium, whatever, but this was very much a chance where South Carolina could have gotten run out of their own building. And so if you're a
Agreed.
South Carolina fan that's going, where are we at? Where's Beamer at? All that. These boys look really fired up for Coach Beamer. They haven't quit on the team, and I wish you could say the same about my team.
Yeah. That's true. It's a good point, Will. There's a lot of different ways to interpret a loss. I know we've kind of debated that back and forth. You and I internally of like, don't like sell hopium. I've told you that before. Of like, don't feel like you have to sell hopium. Sometimes losses just suck, and this loss, I think, for South Carolina sucked. But at the same time, your team did show fight after we really questioned that a lot, and that doesn't make it any easier. But that's just kind of reality for this team now. And I'll probably say at season's end, South Carolina's best win of the year was the loss to Bama.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
that's sad but true. Before we get to the rest of the podcast, I want to talk to you guys about Kalshi. This is something that is blowing up right now. Maybe you've seen people reference Kalshi in relation to a lot of different things that are going on in the world. And basically, this is a place where you can make money off of predictions. What do we do on these preview pods? We predict things. We tell you, hey, this is how you would bet here. This is how you would bet there. This isn't betting. This is sports trading. This is the ability to make predictions and say, hey, I can make money off of that. If you go to Kalshi right now, you can see that they have markets for a variety of different things. You can predict who's going to be the next head coach at UNC or Penn State or these different things that there are markets for. And the cool thing about this, all 50 states you can do this in. They are legal at the federal level. It's not a state-by-state deal. And so Kalshi has just a wide variety of things that you can make picks on, make predictions on, and win money. It's a really, really cool source to be able to kind of flex some of those prediction muscles. I know all of you listening to this, you guys can see into the crystal ball. So use the promo code SDS, get signed up today, and make yourself some money on Kalshi. All right, Mizzou, Vandy. It's still just Vandy's world, and we're living in it. Seeing Josh Snead, the SEC shorts, friend of the show, giving Saban the crown and the king, the Vandy, what are we calling it? Vandy King outfit,
The garb. Yeah.
The
The
Vandy
sacred
garb.
remnant of Vanderbilt. Yeah.
If Vandy wasn't going to win after that, come on, that was inevitable. That it really was. College game day being in the house for a top 15 matchup doesn't necessarily force Vandy to turn into a pumpkin at all. Just grinds out a win against Mizzou amidst obviously the Bo Perbula injury. He goes down just a nasty ankle injury as he's getting stood up on fourth down. Some said it was a dirty play. I won't pretend to know. I won't say either way that it's a dirty play or it's not a dirty play. I won't pretend to know what it goes into the mindset of a trenches player on fourth and goal in a 3-3 game in a battle of top 15 teams. How about that? Is that at least fair?
Yeah, I think that we've seen so many times where a guy just gets stopped and stopped and stopped, and on that third and fourth effort, he's able to just squeeze the ball across the goal line. So I think, if you're a warrior, you're in the trenches, you can't even really see all that. So to your point, like, I think it's just unfortunate. Trying to place blame on a kid in kind of this gladiator sport isn't the move here. There are some where it's like you suplex a guy in midfield. It's like, okay, that was
Sure.
dirty. But I think that that's one where, in a game this close, you just do everything you can to make a play, and it just sucks sometimes.
Yeah, and just an awful sequence for Mizzou because it was looking like Damon Wilson had just totally flipped the momentum with that interception. Did he fumble? Did he not fumble? I don't know. And Mizzou looks like it's just getting ready to score. And then not only does Mizzou not get 7 because Perbula gets stood up at the goal line, but he gets carted off with a dislocated ankle. It looks like his regular season's over. Drink said that there's not a timetable for his return. And then boom, right after that, you get the McKylan Young 80-yard touchdown run. a very much this is why we can't have nice things type sequence for Mizzou. It was huge. It was massive. Tough ask for Matt Zollers, the true freshman quarterback who, look, did some good things down the stretch. He's a third string quarterback. He is a third string quarterback, and coming into a game in that atmosphere. Yes, I said in that atmosphere because Vandy fans brought it. It looked very much like a hostile atmosphere. It was a road atmosphere, and to do that against a defense that's playing really, really well right now, that was just going to be too much to ask from him. The failed Jamal Roberts exchange was great play by our guy, C Snake, CJ Hurd. But I don't know, a reminder that third string quarterbacks probably don't have a whole lot of reps with guys like Jamal Roberts doing that. It's tough to have that rapport on the RPO. Like I was wondering after that, like how many times do you think Zollers has handed the football off to Roberts ever, like including practice?
And such a feel play, right? Where it's like a
Yeah.
little bit slower developing. Like you got to know your guy, he's got to know you. So not that it's a bad play call or anything, but yeah, I mean the sea snake shutting down the shipping lanes, no commerce coming here. So and again, like I hate to, this just kind of goes back off of your last point, but I hate to say this, guys, but boy, howdy, is this just another very, very, very Mizzou loss, right? Where they played
Yep.
so tough, but right in these big moments, you have the injury, which just sucks. And again, a moment where you're trusting your guys are going for it on fourth and goal. You know what I'm saying? Like hey, you could take the points and maybe live to fight another day or whatever. So I always try to give props to that, almost no matter how it goes, because in modern college football, cowards do not get the benefit. Like it usually doesn't work out for you. And again, to have it come down to okay, third string quarterback actually plays really well statistically, has that, but to get that close to tying despite all of that is just so heart wrenching. And again, like this is a Mizzou team that has had enough pats on the back, like you just talked about. But it says a lot about Vandy, and it says that Vandy is a team that is right there, has a conversation for probably the third or fourth best team in the SEC.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. Vandy is 7-1 in American tackle football. 7-1. I mean, it's we're running out of things to say. Like we're just going to keep bringing up presidential administrations to talk about some Vandy feat every single week. First win as a top 10 team since 1947, the Harry Truman administration. 3 wins against top 15 teams this year. Diego Pavia is healthy. This defense just is making big time plays though, and that I think is the difference in a game like that, and why ultimately they're just such a tough out. Like I continue to say repeatedly, you just don't march up and down the football field and score at will against Vandy's defense. You just don't. It's a really difficult thing to do, and Mizzou's offense, like it felt like tough sledding for so much of the time in which Purbulo was in, and then Zollers is obviously able to come in and do some things, but they again were able to do a pretty good job containing Ahmad Hardy. He didn't have one of those like backbreaking 60-yard touchdowns in the way that Vandy was able to get that. And that's what it comes down to. Like the separation from Mizzou is not so great where they're going to be able to overcome some of those mistakes. Bama has been the type of team that can overcome some of those mistakes. We talked about A&M being the type of team that can overcome some of those mistakes. Mizzou is like too evenly matched with a lot of these teams to overcome that. And it seems like Vandy is going in the other direction of, hey, we might not have our best day offensively. Clark Lee talked about afterwards. That was a grind of a game. It was not a pretty game. It was 3-3 for a long time. And they have not played necessarily in a ton of those types of games this year where it's like really, really frustrating for the offense throughout. I guess the Bama game would be part of that too. But man, it's just so much more than a good story. And I don't know who else needs to hear that at this point. It's so much more than just a good story to think of how good this football team is. And I just don't think you can tell the story of 2025 without Vandy, regardless of how this turns out. Because I don't know that a magical postseason run is in store, Will, but this might be the magical run that we're watching right now. And so we don't have to say, like, keep moving the goalposts with Vandy. The goalposts are fine where they are. Vandy exceeded them like a month ago. All right. They did. And I don't necessarily feel like I should have to bang the drum for this team in what's going to be a monumental showdown coming into that, that Texas game on the road. But think about this. Vandy's plus 112 to make the college football playoff on FanDuel. Plus 112. Obviously need to be able to probably go into Texas and win, or if you don't win there, then you still got to win out. But why would it be surprising if Vandy is hosting a home playoff game, seeded 5 through 8, at this point, I don't. If you're scoffing at that, you're just not paying attention.
Who do you think would be their person to come out and kind of lead the chance if they have a home playoff game in Nashville?
I love me some Nate Bargatze. You know that. Nate Bargatze, seeing him on College Game Day, that's my guy. Um, Theo Vaughn has inserted himself into that.
I
Um,
think it's got to be a musician or it's got to be somebody who's like of Nashville, you know?
but I don't know. Some of that feels like stolen valor, doesn't it? Chris Stapleton? Chris
Chris
Stapleton there?
Stapleton would go hard. That would be
It's
perfect.
Vandy
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. That's and speaking of that, right? Vandy, as far as the athletic department, does remind me of Indiana a bit, where it's like, hey, forget the past, really enjoy the present, but you can still be excited about the future, right? You can still be excited about these couple of guys in
True.
Clark Lee and Barton Simmons, who is kind of their roster overlord here, who were roommates at Vandy. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to worry about neither of those teams with Signetti just signing the extension. You don't really have to worry about these big jobs knocking on your door in that same way because Vandy stuck with these guys and trusted the process, and they came up with this zany Rube Goldberg machine offense, and it worked. And so now they have time. A guy like Barton Simmons is used to the structure of recruiting and building the trenches and doing all that, as well as the transfer portal, obviously. And so rest assured, while this team is winning on the field, they're selling Nashville, they're selling this environment, they're selling. Vandy's had some of the coolest jerseys in the SEC, among other things, for a long time. Like it looks cool to be good at Vandy. So yeah, I think that their future is super bright as well. And but enjoy the present.
Yes, enjoy the present 100%. This ride is really fun and you should not necessarily be concerned. I will bring up a talking point like this simply because it is my job to, and I'm
Here we
still
go.
appreciating
Here
every
we
single.
go.
If you're Clark Lee, your biggest future problem is what happens when both of my coordinators probably get poached. It's not a guarantee. We shouldn't assume that. If you are one of these big time programs, you should be shelling out a whole lot of money to get Steve Gregory and to get Tim Beck because the job that those two are doing, it can't go unnoticed. They should both be part of the Broyles Award conversations. They really should. And these are the types of people that can turn around the trajectory of a program. Barton Simmons as well, and the roster evaluation, all the different things that they've done in that arena that are just so not Vandy. But that's going to be, and that's a good thing. Like that's, you win a national championship, you're Ryan Day. Oh, what happens? I got to start over with two new coordinators. Like it was a yearly occurrence with Bama. Oh, we win a national championship. Our OC gets poached, our DC gets poached. This is the byproduct of being a really good football team. And that's a good future problem to have. And to me, it just makes me also come back to this moment and say, appreciate the now. Don't worry about what's next with all of that stuff, but it's all the more reason to appreciate now, appreciate this run. Vandy is really, really good, and they deserve everything. That number that's next to their name. If you're scoffing at that, like you just shouldn't be. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and I'll say really quick, just to put a bow on that, I'm actually fascinated what happens when Diego Pavia leaves, right? Talking about the future of those coordinators, because I'm not even super convinced that they're married to this style. Because like I wouldn't think that their OC, right, would be uh really super highly valuable among like the top tier because it's going to be hard to recruit skill position guys to that offense as far as wide receivers, maybe tight ends would like it. But if you are a top, like if you're a Florida, it's like, well, we have the ability to get blue chip talent all over the field, and this is an offense that flattens that versus kind of like maximizes it. So it wouldn't shock me at all if Pavia leaves and they open it up a little bit more and completely change what they're doing too.
Yeah, how would every tight end in college football not want to play in the Tim Beck offense after seeing what Eli Stowers has been able to do with Tim Beck? Man,
Yep.
some of the plays he's still making, golly, it's remarkable to think that guy started his career as a quarterback at A&M and that he's taken this journey to be able
But
to
that's
get
the
here.
most likely place to start off, honestly, as a quarterback under Jimbo Fisher. That could get you anything in this world, buddy.
This is true. This is true. Look what it did for Marcel Reed. All right. Another top 15 showdown. Yeah, we're getting to a top 15 showdown like 38 minutes into the pod. That's just week 9 in the SEC. Ole Miss and Oklahoma. RIP to one of my most head turning stats that I would like to bring up. Um, I brought it up a lot on this show, but for the first time since 2011, Lane Kiffin earned a true road win against a ranked power conference foe. First time he did that at Ole Miss, obviously, and it took a gritty, down to the wire showing from his team. Wherein, just like we talked about with Mizzou and Vandy, we had the Hail Mary at the very end. The Zollers Hail Mary was better than the Jean Mateer Hail Mary. We can say that. But for
John
Ole
Mateer's
Miss,
just, I ain't hear no bell. Just out there. Parts of him are falling off. He's like a zombie, but he's still a warrior. I don't necessarily feel bad for him because the team still, it's not a like poor you situation because they still have a lot ahead of them. But man, it just kind of wits when they give him those carriers, those deep shots.
John Mateer's electric. Maybe somebody else throwing a Hail Mary at the very end after the day that he had and some of the injuries that obviously he's accrued during the season so far. But yeah, I mean for Ole Miss, it was obvious when they were able to get a lead in this game what the question was going to be. Are they going to repeat what they did against Georgia, or are they going to be able to kind of overcome that and actually make plays down the stretch? And they were able to do that. They did not take their foot off the gas a week after they had 13 yards in the fourth quarter at Georgia and 0 points to blow a two-score lead. Ole Miss has 103 fourth quarter yards, 9 points, the two scoring drives, and they overcome a fourth quarter deficit in this one and do so on the road against a really, really good defense. And Lane talks about it afterwards. It felt like the defense was still kind of the shining unit. And Princely Umanmielen was fantastic for that group. Really, really good. And he had really, I mean, think about this too. Ole Miss kind of only had two busts that felt like the day for Oklahoma, where you had the Xavier Robinson touchdown run and then the long Isaiah Satania touchdown. Isaiah Satania has been awesome since transferring from Arkansas to Oklahoma. But outside of that, like the Ole Miss defense was really, really good after it got shredded at Georgia last week and was unable to hold on late. Huge win for Lane Kiffin, especially when you consider what we talked about in the preview. If you lose this game and it's two in a row, all of a sudden, hey, is this 2022 all over again? Are you distracted by another job? Is your team about to fall apart? And instead, Lane's the one that's chirping the Oklahoma player. Did you see this in the postgame interview?
Oh yeah, he was feeling it.
Yeah, David Stone, the Oklahoma defensive lineman, he's like coming up to Lane for those who didn't see this. And it looks like he's kind of just like trying to dap up Lane, or maybe he's trying to do a little bit more talking. And Lane's kind of just not having it. He's like, "Oh, you're a whole lot quieter now than you were during this game." He was chirping us the whole game and whatnot.
So it's a respectable move as a bleep talker to be chirping the whole game and then come up after the game, look the guy in the eye, and dap the guy up. But it's a little bit of a scared move to try to do it while he's on TV because you usually don't think he's going to say anything back to you. So if you're getting put on blast on TV, you kind of deserve it because you should have done that off air.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And I'll put a pin in this one, Will. And look, I'm not saying that this is inevitable, but if David Stone, a former five-star defensive lineman, ends up in an Ole Miss uniform at this time next year, nobody's going to be surprised. Just file that one away.
Yep.
Okay. But anyway, we talked about whether or not A&M maybe has the best offense in the SEC. And I think you could add Tennessee to that conversation, maybe even Georgia, part of that conversation. I would still say that Ty Simpson would be the quarterback that I would want the most, but I think it's a two-horse race between A&M for Ole Miss for the best offense in the SEC. Like I think that's the discussion at this point, Will.
It's interesting, man, because I don't want to get on here after a big Ole Miss win like this and doubt their offense, but I just have seen it against quality competition a little bit more, specifically for A&M, specifically on the road. Like Lane Kiffin also just did this. Good.
This is quality competition, though.
No, I know, I know.
Oklahoma's defense is so good.
Oh, I fully agree. I'm just saying, like from the A&M standpoint, it's complete. Like they've had to have several games where things weren't hitting and they've had to respond. But this, like answering this question for Lane Kiffin, is the biggest of his career, right? Where it's when you're supposed to be pouty nepo baby guy who checks out, takes his ball, goes home, and gets on the phone. No, you have a big lead at halftime. The other team comes roaring back, and the building is rocking on the road. Shut them down for the entire fourth quarter. A 16-3 third quarter for Oklahoma and a 9-0 fourth quarter for Ole Miss. If you're Jimmy Sexton today, you're the happiest guy on earth for what Lane Kiffin just did, because that was his question. Can Kalen DeBoer beat an unranked team? Can Lane Kiffin avoid the dreaded Lane turtle? And this was an all-time response to that.
Agreed. Thoughts on that in a second here. But just to put some respect on this performance a little bit more, this offensive performance for Ole Miss: 315 passing yards, 121 sack adjusted rushing yards, convert on third or fourth down 11 times in this one against that unit, 5 red zone trips. They all end with scores. Doing that against that Oklahoma defense is really difficult. Easily the most yards that they've allowed all year. I think Texas had like 302 against them, and Texas had one offensive touchdown, and that was like their worst defensive game. And they had not allowed that many yards since last year's SEC opener at Auburn. and that was the most points that they allowed to anyone since LSU last year. Yeah, this is an OU defense that just does not get pushed around, and it seemed like Ole Miss, whenever it needed that big time play, it was able to get it. And I'll make the announcement. You said Bama, congrats, you've clinched the playoff. You said that last week. I'm gonna say for Ole Miss. Ole Miss, congrats, you are going to the college football playoff. No remaining SEC opponents with a winning record, an overall winning record. They are a combined 3-11 in SEC play, and two of those wins are by a Florida team that already fired Billy Napier. And to your point, Will, talking about Jimmy Sexton, happiest guy in America on Saturday, probably. Brutal result for Florida. You should have been rooting for Oklahoma in this game. I do legitimately think that if Ole Miss is playoff bound, these conversations are much more difficult to have if that's your guy. And you can tell me that, oh, you know what, they'll have like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge thing. It would be unprecedented to have something like that lined up. And you could say maybe Lane would be willing to sign an NDA or something like that, and all parties. That stuff can still get leaked, and that can still just be a disastrous situation that coaches typically don't want to invite, especially if they're playing for a national championship potentially for the first time, which obviously Lane has not had the chance to be able to do that as a head coach. So I think if you were a Florida fan, that was the worst possible result that could have played out on Saturday.
Yeah, it was kind of funny for me again running the SDS account to see, okay, beginning of the day there was like the Sark rumor news, whatever. I see Florida fans, haha, and then I
We'll get
see
to
the Ole
that.
Miss
Yep.
game, okay, Oklahoma, haha, and then I see the LSU game, haha, and I'm going, all of this is terrible for everybody that has a job open right now, right? Like all of this. Lane Kiffin is more likely to stay. Brian Kelly is more likely to leave. And again, Sark not even going to get into that can of worms, but just the report of it. It is not a ha moment. It is no one who wants to compete with Texas for a job ever. And just really quick to put a bow on the Lane stuff. I think what's so impressive to me is that uh like I said, we're talking about the offense. Okay, Alabama has Ryan Williams, Ty Simpson. A&M has, Marshall Reed, these two insane receivers, Terry, all that. But when you look and see Lacey just waltzing into the end zone for that first Ole Miss touchdown, it's like it doesn't
Wide
matter
open.
who's on this team.
Yep.
And that's the scariest that you could be is
Dude,
we don't need one dude.
they have more guys that well, I feel like I really try and pride myself on knowing these rosters and knowing what's going on. And if a receiver has a big time play, all right, I need to figure out kind of who this guy is, or at least you kind of get whiffs of some guy that has a big game, and then you kind of file it away. Ole Miss leads the country in who's that guy that just got a 70-yard touchdown? They always do it. How do they just bring up these guys out of nowhere? And I'm like, wait a minute. I spent so much time talking about this transfer guy that they spent this amount of money on. And Lane probably was just like, oh, yeah, you want to come be fifth string or something like that on this team? We are like 6 wide receiver or whatever. Like, I guess you can have a spot. And then they find ways to make plays. You're right. It doesn't feel like it matters. And that's why it's this, besides just the Chambliss piece of it, it's turning into Lane Kiffin's best coaching job of his career. And it might not even end up being close.
Yes, and it's so funny because again, you look at the criticism of Lane Kiffin. It's doesn't know how to put his hand in the dirt. He's been handed stuff. Loves the transfer portal. Doesn't want to recruit, and yet he gets these guys out of the transfer portal, and they got to earn their spot immediately. We were talking about Austin Simmons. He's the next 2 or whatever. Not that he was a portal guy, but that they brought in Trinidad Chambliss. Everybody goes, yeah, okay, you got that guy from Ferris State for depth, just so you get a practice quarterback. Cool. It's like, no, every job is actually open. This is the most egalitarian, merit-based team in the SEC, which is crazy. It's Lane Kiffin, who's like dunking basketballs and going to hot yoga. That's like really the Nick Saban or Kirby Smart of that.
Can we get 1 week where Pete Nakos doesn't tweet about, oh, Trinidad Chambliss is expected to be the starter on Saturday? Dude's one of the best quarterbacks in college football. He won this job a month ago. Not to like discredit what Pete is doing, because maybe there's some behind the scenes like agent stuff where like Austin Simmons people or something like that are like, trying to push the narrative that it's still like a back and forth decision that Lane is making. Lane made his mind up forever ago. So I don't need to hear, oh, Trinidad Chambliss is going to be. No, tell me if Trinidad Chambliss is all of a sudden questionable or something like that, or if he's, dealing with some sort of late week injury. But until then, I'm going to assume that Trinidad Chambliss is stepping on that field as QB1 for Lane Kiffin. He's going to play out of his mind, and we're all going to go, how in the world was this guy at a Division II school last year? And don't tell the AD of Ferris State that I said that, but we're all very much in agreement that this is just wild to see the plays that he's making against this level of competition too. Like the running lanes, and I talked about beforehand how he hadn't really been a scrambler that much, and he just still picks his spots, and he's so shifty, and he's just so smart. And I'm really impressed. I feel like I keep assuming Ole Miss is about to fall off the face of the earth, and I think I need to stop assuming that.
And you know what, Lane? I don't know if Lane listens to this, but I think us in the media will give you
You're
this.
speaking of Lane right now.
I don't know if I will say this. Us in the media will give you this. Okay, you get one free troll lineup injury report. Go ahead and say you're starting Caden Lee at quarterback next week. Just say it, and that way you got to get the Pete Nakos report, and you got to defend it all week with a big smile on your face. Do it. We won't call you an unserious coach. You've crossed all the hurdles. Say you're starting your kicker at punter. Who cares? Just have one fun one against one of these bad teams. Get it out of your system and go win in the playoffs because you deserve it.
Would Caden Lee throw for 200 yards in the Lane Kiffin offense?
I'm starting to believe that almost anyone but Austin Simmons could run this offense.
Maybe. Golly. No wonder Lane was just throwing Austin Simmons under the bus immediately afterwards. Goodness. And on the Oklahoma side of this, I think OU fans know like this was the one they had to have to keep playoff hopes alive. It's not looking good for that discussion. They're staring at an uphill battle just to get to 9-3 at Tennessee and then at Alabama in the next two. And then Mizzou and LSU at home are more winnable games, but I think very much 8-4 is the new expectation for this team. And John Mateer not looking particularly good in this one. It certainly hurts that sense of optimism. It'd be different if he kind of played out of his mind. It's just kind of an aberration game for the defense. But, instead, amidst kind of a breakout game from Xavier Robinson, who had more rushing yards than any Oklahoma running back this year, you are kind of scratching your head going, man, I thought we had our offensive identity sort of figured out. And instead, you're just kind of going in the wrong direction. Competition level has certainly been ramped up in recent weeks, and that's maybe perhaps exposed some of those issues. But it's a team that doesn't feel like it is capable of doing anything beyond 8-4. I don't think Brent Venables would worry about getting fired this year, but he would still, if 8-4 is the path, he would still get people wondering what his future holds with a new boss and kind of what all that looks like. And you're kind of just pushing that conversation to next year if this year plays out the way that we think it will.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the more humbling conversations we can have. And I had it about Auburn, after the Georgia game, where it goes, "Hey, you were that team in the Big Ten or Big 12. We remember it vividly." Where if you look at the last year, the last several years before the disastrous last Lincoln Riley year, right? It's first, 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 first in the Big 12. It's just a dominant team, and so we could all laugh at, oh, Venables coming out and saying we used to own the Big 12. That's all we've known for our entire lives. So if you're Oklahoma and you're looking at this, is 8-4 acceptable for Oklahoma? It's something that your boosters, that your fans are not used to. And in college football, that's not something that's easy to stomach. So do you think, hey, like that, and that's we're kind of aligned here where it's like, I don't think this is a fire Venables type of season, but I think that also speaks volumes where it goes, this would have been a think about pushing Bob Stoops out the door season. This might have been a fire Lincoln Riley season, but now it's not. And I think is coming back from, what we had in these last couple of years enough. And I think it's enough to keep the job, but maybe not beyond, can't do this twice in a row, I would think.
There'll be a lot of questions about OU to figure out. I don't know what Ben Arbuckle's future holds. Maybe kind of the silver lining of this offense, kind of having some struggles down the stretch is maybe hiring a 30-year-old to be, an FBS or a power conference head coach isn't necessarily the next move for him. And if you're Brent Venables, maybe you can hold on to hope that you're going to return Mateer. You're going to return maybe Arbuckle as well, more experienced offensive line. You could still work the portal to be able to get some of those guys in there at the skill positions and feel like you're going to have a chance. And even though it's going to be a very new look defense, there's still reason for some optimism. Maybe the schedule doesn't play out to be as difficult as it was these first 2 years in the SEC. But yeah, I mean, you're right. What's acceptable? What do those people behind the scenes, and not even Joe Castiglione, who I don't think would be making this decision of what's going to happen beyond the Brent Venables era, if and when that comes. But like, what do those people behind closed doors feel is acceptable in this day and age? And that's something that you just don't quite know until you see it pushed to that place. So we'll see. All right. The team that Oklahoma just can't stand watching winning football games that somehow found a way, Texas and Mississippi State. Will, apparently the most casual team in college football, just needed to fall behind by 17 points in the fourth quarter to um, the team that hadn't won an SEC game in 2 years to just all of a sudden become the best version of itself. Sure, why not?
Maybe as a fellow play yourself into shape guy, I should start respecting them a little bit more, but probably should be playing yourself into shape against Kentucky and Mississippi State, even if you did win both of those games. All right.
That is such a great way to describe it. Texas is the ultimate "I'm gonna play myself into shape" team. It's so true. This golly, there so funny story. I wasn't able to watch this one live, like basically the whole second half. I wasn't able to watch this one live because I was at the wedding. And two of my buddies, however, were watching this live at our table, and they were on the other side of it. And I was really trying to do the best I could to be present and not just checking scores and doing that, because then my mind all of a sudden shifts into that mode. And I'd only seen when it was 31 to 14. And so they tell me that Texas came back and they were watching through overtime. They just had YouTube TV pulled up on their phone as we are in like the midst of this 2 hour dinner, really, really long dinner, great dinner, long dinner. And I'm trying to like not be present or whatever. But then they said game over, and they held the horns down, and then they flipped them back up. I was like, wait a minute, so Texas won? And why? And I'm sure for those who maybe if you were a Texas fan who turned this game off at some point when Devon Booth makes it a 38-21 game, you turned it off and then had to be reminded of like, oh my God, like, or not reminded, but informed that Texas won this game. I would love to know that. How many Texas fans turned this game off and did not even see this comeback with the way that it played out and just assumed that they were going to wake up Sunday morning with a team that was eliminated from playoff contention? It's greater than 0%, probably not as much, probably not 30%, somewhere in between, I bet.
Yeah, I had a career high in old takes exposed retweets from the SDS account because you know me, I'm usually the most jinx proof guy because I often say past tense is immune from the jinx, right? If you say Texas has dominated Mississippi State to this point, well, that's not a jinx because that's true. That's just a fact. Usually I do that. For like the one time I was like, look, Texas is or Mississippi State's just roundly a better football team than Texas today because of how badly they were beating them. Kind of not exactly in all phases because special teams always going to be Texas's bag, right? But like physicality, offense, like the things that really matter, and kind of just discipline in a way, right? And the whole game flipping on that roughing penalty.
Yep.
And you look back at the the final score and the stats, it's like wow, Arch had this just like amazing day on paper, but it certainly didn't feel like it for three kind of and a half quarters. And so this is going to be an all-time box score watcher game where maybe some of like the West Coast folks or the people to your point that went to bed that maybe covered Big Ten teams and went on to do other things are like, oh, Texas, like, looks like these two high-powered offenses, Levy, like we talked about in the preview, Sarkisian Levy, like, oh, their offenses back and forth. No, like, this was a pretty. I mean, do you think it shows toughness or do you think it shows laziness? That's the question.
Yes. To answer your question, yes. Credit Texas because they took advantage of that roughing call, 4th and 1 in a 17-point game. You just can't have that. It's a reminder of why it's been so hard for Mississippi State to win these games, losing the way that they have to Tennessee, to Florida, and to Texas now. Like, these are just losses that are piling up. And it's one thing when you're the team that's just not talented and you just don't belong on the field. It's another to have those types of losses. It's a good thing for the sake of Jeff Lebby and his team's psyche that they at least won the Arizona State game instead of blowing that one too. But these losses are piling up, and you're right. Like, Texas, for whatever reason, I've criticized them. I'm criticized Texas for thinking it has this switch, and this was kind of the first game which it was a true switch that was flipped, because I would even argue the Oklahoma game, it's kind of back and forth, and it's not so much like, oh, they've been outplayed totally. It's Texas just was the better team in the second half, whereas this one, they had been soundly outplayed and probably deserved to lose this game. And then instead, Mississippi State just opens the door in every possible dumb way. Why in the world you're punting to Ryan Niblett in that spot is beyond me. Stop punting to Ryan Niblett. Teams, people, human beings everywhere, just don't do it. If you're thinking about doing it, just don't.
That's kind of my takeaway here is like, hey, while we can now say, oh, Texas has this switch, it's the easiest switch in history to turn off because all you have to do is kick the ball out of bounds. Because all these games have featured this one thing that, like, they kept saying on SEC Final, just don't kick to the guy. And as a Bears fan, you know how that was with Hester, where it's like, well, a lot of our hope here
Oh,
hinges on kicking to this guy, and if the other team doesn't do that, we're in trouble. So I don't think. What do you think? Over under one punt return opportunity for the rest of the year for Niblett.
I under. It should be under. If it's over, people need to get fired. That's how special teams coordinators lose their jobs. You're right though. As a Bears fan who experienced Devin Hester being the best player on offense, even though he rarely played on offense, it was there's something about an offense that's just stuck in the mud that like they're really struggling to get up and down the field. That if you have that punt returner and you see, during the week a punter comes out with or a coach says, yeah, we're not going to be afraid to punt to this guy, blah, blah, blah. You're like, sweet. So I can make on at least one touchdown for that guy. That's going to be awesome. And will it come at an opportune time? You would hope so. And sure enough, in this game, it happened at the exact right time. And Texas just didn't quit in this one. Didn't even quit when Arch very clearly suffered a concussion and isn't able to have that game-winning touchdown in overtime. Matthew Caldwell is the one who delivers it. And something to monitor for the Vandy game as well with Arch. Kind of how are they playing the long game? There'll be a lot of discussion about that, even though I don't know. You know what? We'll save that for the preview pod. Never mind. We'll save that for the preview pod. But just a wild comeback and the type of game that Sark desperately needed his team to play because they were staring at an embarrassing loss. And after the day that he had, Will, wouldn't have been great. We mentioned with Kiffin how if you lose that game to Oklahoma, all of a sudden everybody's going, I bet it's the job discussion that's distracting him. And Saturday morning to have that come out from Diana Rossini, to have her report that Sark would have NFL head coaching interest if those opportunities were to arise, including, one potentially with the Texans. What's the point? What are we doing? What Steve Sarkisian is a control freak. There is clearly like that's not it that's getting out with intent. You could say that he can try and deny that stuff all he wants. That is his people behind the scenes getting that out with intent. And I don't understand what the point of that is when he's been very, very well paid at Texas. So if you could say like, he's just angling for more money, it's what it's all about. Like he gets extensions whenever he wants at Texas, basically. And you're not like trying to negotiate that contract anymore. You're not at some sort of standoff with your AD. I think it just makes it tougher for you to recruit at a time in which you have nothing working against you in the recruiting world. Like you're recruiting top 5 classes and stacking them. I don't see the point in that unless you really want to go. Like go ask Dan Mullen what it's like to float out NFL interest just for the sake of floating out NFL interest and see how much your fan base or your administration loves you. I don't get it.
So you think this was intentional by Sark?
Yes. 100%.
I think it's interesting. I mean, if it, I hate to say I didn't consider that because I am the most jaded person where it comes to this type of stuff, but I just don't see how, if you're a control freak, if you're an egomaniac, putting yourself in that situation helps you at all. Like, I think that when we look kind of
Ego.
internally, yeah, you know what I'm saying? But I mean, why not just drop it before the NFL games? You know what I'm saying? Like, why? Because it's not even. I guess you're getting like college football guys involved, but even putting out that statement, which they said was the first of its kind for CAA, which is a really big deal. It just felt sloppy. Like it just felt like it wasn't. It didn't. It felt like it was a leak. You know?
But if it's leaked, I think it's still leaked with intent. And like I'm not saying that means Sark legitimately wants to go to the NFL, but think about the way that this season has played out for him. And he's got people saying that he shouldn't be calling plays anymore. He didn't develop Arch Manning, the most talented quarterback that's ever existed, and all of a sudden he can't find ways to maximize his talents, and it feels like an ego thing. It feels so much like an ego thing, and maybe I'll be proven wrong with some of that stuff, but I kind of hated that. And I feel like I've defended Sark a lot. And I don't really think that's defendable if your intent is truly to stay at Texas. If you're doing this for ego related reasons, to me, I think you've lost the plot a little bit. And it kind of makes me a little bit more like, no, like if I'm a Texas fan, I'm not looking at this going, oh man, like please don't leave us. That'd be the worst thing in the world. I'm looking at it going, what do you mean, man? What you've been given every opportunity here, every opportunity. We're grateful, but to float this out there for what? Like,
So in
what are
your
you trying to
mind,
prove?
like you think, and I mean, I guess this actually makes it funnier, and it does, I guess, make more sense. Where it goes, okay, his intent would have been, I leak this in the morning, the team rallies around it, we blow out Mississippi State, I call a whale of a game, everybody gets off my back. Whereas what happened in reality was like we struggled mightily against Mississippi State, and I look kind of like I don't know how to say clown better, but like I mean, at the end they win, like I get it, but so in your mind the situation didn't play out the way that he expected it to, basically.
I think so. And it's different for this is different than like Jordan Rodriguez reporting for the Athletic that the NFL is going to have interest in Dan Lanning. It's where this is coming from. They're not. That's not seeing the light of day unless Sark is really floating that out there to just to gauge interest. And I just don't get the point of gauging interest. And I won't even get into like the whole like NFL head coaches who take from the college ranks, like the college coaches just never work out. Like we don't even need to get into that discussion. To me, that's not really what this is about. To me, if all of a sudden Steve Sarkisian is feeling insecure about his standing and this is becoming too much for him, to me that's showing a sign of weakness that I don't think he's really shown at this point in Texas. Like I think he's been pretty bulletproof with a lot of this stuff and a lot of the moves that he's made, and it makes me just kind of scratch my head a little bit. So whatever. Maybe that's going to be the last time we actually end up talking about this. The good news for Texas is that you win a game that you absolutely had to have to keep your playoff hopes alive. Besides the comeback, which they said on SEC Final, teams were 2-230 when trailing by 17 in the fourth quarter, which is wild. Besides all that, Arch played his tail off down the stretch. Sark said that he grew up. We've heard that a couple of times this season, Will. So I don't want to necessarily think that's a turning of the corner moment. Still would like to just be able to see it over the course of an entire game. Just like show up looking like you are every bit as talented as you were billed as. And that's not necessarily Arch's fault, which we've talked about, but still, just put it together for 60 minutes. This was a just get out alive game for Texas. Still the most casual team in college football. It is still the ultimate I'm playing myself into playing shape type team, but if you have one SEC loss going into November, if you're Texas, that's kind of all you care about.
Yeah, it's I mean, just really quick before we get, I don't think there's much to get into with State here. Maybe they will win an SEC game at some point.
Dude, Jeff
Uh
Lebby is over it at this
it's like,
point.
okay,
Like,
it's like it's again, I hate to say boring because that was a great game, but it's like they have found just every freaking way to lose. Honestly, more so than Auburn, because Auburn's found a way to win some games. They won on Saturday. It is actually impressive how they have kept Texas A&M to a one-score game, like in the fourth quarter, right? And then it's just like, nope, we're gonna blow this one too.
did you see what Jeff Lebby mouthed when Blake Shapen when he got sacked for the final play?
No.
To He said, you've got to be effing kidding me,"
Yep. I
and
feel it.
just a look of disbelief. That's I, that's a tough thing to be at that place
Mhm.
already. And I'm not going to assume anything that happens with this team, but they got to get one of these SEC wins, man, or else all of a sudden you're losing your coach too. If he's losing faith in this team, and if he feels like this is just always going to end up, somehow not going our way, maybe we need to be more critical of Jeff Lebby in the way that we are with Hugh Freeze. Like
Honestly,
maybe that's what we need to be talking about.
because it's crazy enough, right? That we talk about Texas winning these back-to-back weird games. How about Jeff Levy losing these back-to-back weird games where you get a pick from a thick boy at the end of the Florida game where you're supposed to beat them at in the swamp to kill Billy Napier, and then you somehow lose that game, and then here you somehow lost a game that you were up by that much. So yeah, again, we probably have more time to talk about it. It's just not really that relevant to the overall SEC
The play
conversation.
calling thing is the play calling thing going to get brought up where you're having lapses in special teams? We talked about
Hmm.
it with Billy Napier so much.
Hmm.
When you have lapses in these other areas, these game management areas where you're punting to Ryan Niblett, all of a sudden it's, well, are you spending too much time calling plays? That's the way this works, and I think that's something he's kind of fighting against with the way that they've blown these games.
Yeah, I think that's the wrap up for Mississippi State. Is we can't just treat you like some like special like, oh, good job Pobrecito, you did it, like you're no dude, this is the SEC, you got to win some games. Yeah, and then for Texas, just to put a bow on that as well, we talked about how easy Ole Miss's schedule was. I would argue that Texas is the opposite. So yeah, they have one SEC loss to your point, but we have Vandy at Georgia, home versus Arkansas, home versus Texas A&M. So we could see a couple losses in there, probably a couple better teams in Texas. If you come out casual against three of those teams, you will be down big enough to where you will not really get off the bus in the second half. You will not have the ability. This is not Mississippi State coming up.
I'll say this, Texas fans. I'll say something nice about your team for once. if you do somehow make it to the college football playoff at 10-2, not at 9-3, at 10-2, you will have people wondering if this is Ohio State all over again.
That's what they
You
did.
will
That's
have
a
that.
really good comp, man, because I remember just laughing openly at Ohio State after they lost to these bad teams, especially the way they lost to Michigan at the end of the year. That would be the equivalent, I guess, if they like lost to Arkansas and somehow beat these other three teams bad, and everyone was like, "All right, maybe." But yeah, no, I'm right there with you. Technically, everything is ahead of them, but the odds are 1,000,000 to 1 that they don't get out physical by three of these teams, one of which is Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I looked up their playoff odds. It's like no to make the playoff on FanDuel. I think was like minus 650, which means it's overwhelming that Texas is very likely is going to be left out. But 1 week at a time. That's all they're doing. All right, two teams that had not won a game in SEC play. Someone had to win in Auburn and Arkansas,
Clinching
and
versus sending it, the battle of ideologies.
something had to give, Will. And apparently, what gave was the Jackson Arnold era at Auburn. Adios to that. The Ashton Daniels era. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Bien. Um, Jackson Arnold benched after the pick six. That was just one of the worst throws that you'll see. It was really, really bad. And boom, Hugh Freeze makes a correct quarterback decision. How about that? He did it. He did what nobody said he could do. He correctly picked which quarterback he should play and when.
Somewhere Robbie Asher's going, "Where was this? Hold on, what? It was a 5 star."
I will say this though, we we criticize Hugh Freeze for whiffing on all of these quarterback evaluations. Like he's missed the Jackson Arnold thing whiffed. The one smart thing he did with this room was not just having a true freshman 5-star Deuce Knight be the backup and actually bringing in another transfer. Having an insurance policy for the guy who probably shouldn't have had the job in the first place. Um, not a terribly bad move for Hugh Freeze because if you had to turn to a true freshman in that game, I don't know, like maybe Hugh Freeze just says, I'm just going to stick with Jackson Arnold and kind of take the good with the bad. And you probably don't feel like you have an option to turn to. But instead, being able to recruit Ashton Daniels, another guy out of the portal, maybe that's just kind of the moral of the story is always make sure you're adding at least one quarterback from the portal. Like they say in the NFL, you should be drafting a quarterback every year just to add to your room, 6th-round guy or something like that. Maybe that's just kind of the moral of the story is like a team like Auburn that recruits multiple quarterbacks out of the portal. You needed it to win this game, which you probably shouldn't have, but credit Ashton Daniels for stepping in, knew there was a good possibility he was going to be playing in this one. And just like that, Auburn is a juggernaut who is just going to turn the corner and win every SEC game it plays.
Yeah, I mean, this was just such a freaking chaotic game. It's so hard to take anything from this other than that Hugh Freeze lives to fight another day. That's why I try to not do that with Texas and go, okay, like everything's in front of them. It's like Auburn's kind of already still cooked, right? Like this is just kind of the other team in the SEC that's in a similar situation, taking out Kentucky using their own special case of hell, pretty much. But these two teams, you have one interim head coach who I would say Bobby Petrino probably lost the Arkansas job today. Do you agree with her yesterday?
Agree with that 100%, Will. I agree with that. He's not getting that job. I, he would have had to have gotten not just this win, but one of those two wins previously. Didn't happen. I think that ship has sailed. Crazier things have happened. I'd now be stunned if Bobby Petrino ended up getting the Arkansas job.
Yeah, I mean, it does kind of say more about one team than the other, whereas it feels like Arkansas was maybe looking at their next era. You're kind of in a holding pattern, to be honest, if you're Auburn. You do know your defense is decently legit. Like we talked about some of the Marcel Reed stuff.
Good.
Like that's what's so frustrating when you have an SEC team that's bad. It's often not fully bad. Good.
Yeah, but Taylor Green was the four local quarterback who, if we talk about the riding the buzz of the four loco, I was at a wedding last night, and if I had seen someone like peeing on a plant in the corner of the room, that would have been the byproduct of having too much four loco, probably. That's kind of what Taylor Green was in the fourth quarter of this game against a really good Auburn defense, which, by the way, is held. I think they had the stat. It's like one of 6 defenses in FBS that's held every team it's faced to 25 points or less. It's a good group. It's a really good group, and they needed to do some things to frustrate Taylor Green down the stretch. And Taylor Green was peeing in the corner.
You've just given me a brilliant idea for my own wedding when it eventually happens, and maybe this isn't why I'm married like this because I have ideas like this, but it would be nice to just have a Four Loko mini fridge at my wedding that is just totally
Don't do it,
free,
Will.
and just
Don't
have
do
it
it.
over in the corner, way away from the bar and everything else, and just have the bartender guys like, "Hey, we got free Four Loko over there," and just see how these adult professionals as the night goes on, so you go sneak a Four Loko, and just like everybody wakes up in like Baghdad or something, and so like the hangover, it's like, where did we all? Oh gosh, we had Four Locos, didn't we? And that's exactly what Arkansas feels like waking up after this one. It's like Auburn was such a gettable, how many times do we see a team actively flip quarterbacks in a situation like this? Head coaches on the hot seat. You could look at all the things that were going wrong for Auburn. One thing that's not going wrong for Auburn, Cam Coleman. Goodness, man.
That catch that he made, just dudes draped all over him. Cam Coleman, when his time comes for the NFL draft, and I don't know where he's going to be playing football next year. I don't want to assume anything in this day and age of the portal. You're going to be able to show me a lot of ridiculous catches that this guy made, and I'm going to say, get that guy a better quarterback and just see what he can do.
Yeah, there was a point in the game, it was deep into the game too, where I looked up and I was like, God, that was one of the craziest catches I've ever seen. He had, oh, wow, he finished. How about that? He finished with 2 catches for 27 yards. That is so
That's the
funny.
problem.
I started to
Yep.
be like, I'm surely it changed from there because they changed court. No, no. He, like, you would be insane to put him with like an all SEC team, but at the same time, he could be the best, the most talented receiver in the SEC. We saw that all time ball don't lie call by a referee, which I love, which is it was PI, but the PI caused him to kind of be out of bounds. So let's not redo all this because it obviously should have been a touchdown if it wasn't blatant PI. Love that sometimes, right? Hard to be to figure that out sometimes. But yeah, that being said, what an absolute chaotic game. In a window where we got a Big Ten game between Vandy and Mizzou. We also got this massive chaos that, again, you like the Auburn defense, you hate a lot about Arkansas, and most of this probably won't matter in 3 or 4 months.
Yes, I would agree with that. And just to put a bow on the Jackson Arnold stuff, it's thinking like Hugh Freeze basically looked at him and thought, fixer upper home, mostly cosmetic stuff. Maybe a couple things here or there are going to come up, but this is mostly cosmetic. I can fix this. I can turn this into my dream home. And instead, you get into the house, you go through the inspection, you realize, oh, wait, we need a new roof. The plumbing, it was all messed up. Oh, this guy did his own electrical. How that was ever up to code is beyond me. And you realize this is more of a gut job than you thought, and it's more than you were willing to take on. And that's kind of how it feels like the Jackson Arnold thing has played out, and it looks like he's very likely going to be finding a new home in this offseason, whatever this offseason entails for Auburn. But real quick, Alex McPherson,
I was just about to say that. What an absolute king.
6 for 6. Good for that kid. Good for that kid because of what he dealt with last year and what he even dealt with last week, where he's 1 for 4, brutal showing against Mizzou. He was in tears afterwards. And, we know he had an awful set of circumstances with his health last year. Dave Portnoy is like clowning him after this game last week. And for that guy to show up, tie the SEC single game record with 6 field goals for an offense that, look, they'll take points any way they can get them at this point. But man, great bounce back for that kid. Love seeing that. And I know we've been critical of Towns Magoo and Hugh Freeze, trying to go for 50-yard field goals that never had a chance. It takes some guts to stick with a kid that dealt with what he did, at going 1 for 4 and having some of the issues that are clearly limiting him. And for him to come back 6 for 6, like he needed every bit of that. So wanted to shout out Alex McPherson, definitely a lad of the week candidate.
Couldn't agree more.
All right, well, let's end with some Tennessee and Kentucky. Mark Stoops never had a chance. Never.
Imagine you're me and you watch LSU getting shelled, and you think to yourself, do I switch this over and watch Kentucky, or do I just go do something else? And the answer is, let's go do something else because this game just was no, it was a schedule loss for Kentucky.
It really was. It really was. And the second that Josh Heupel showed up, you probably knew it was over. Cutter Bowley's getting better too. Like that's kind of the depressing thing is that Mark Stoops can actually sell. Hey, you know what? I've got this homegrown quarterback who everybody seems to love, and he's actually making a lot of plays. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if your defense is going to allow 20 yards per completion. You're cooked, and that's what Tennessee did. And Tennessee just like it does every time with Josh Heupel, just goes into Lexington, lights up the scoreboard, and Josh Heupel just owns Mark Stoops. It's as simple as that. Big day for that offense, which is very much still part of which is the best offense in the SEC conversation. 3 different 100-yard receivers Tennessee had in this one. Every blade of grass they wanted in the passing game, they got.
Total of 726 passing yards in this one, Connor.
Defensive backs, shield your eyes. This was not a game for that.
If you're a
Big time
D2
chunk
defensive
plays.
back somewhere, brother, we have a home for you. Send the tape to the coaches.
Rough. Really, really rough. Tim Banks and Mark Stoops, two guys who kind of pride themselves on defensive back play. Yeeks. It was not there, but the Tennessee offense was the most inevitable force in this game. Good bounce back for them, obviously, after the devastating loss to Alabama. If that had, if that had all of a sudden turned into a loss to a lowly Kentucky team, we're asking questions about Tennessee that we were probably asking in the preseason. And instead, they're able to bounce back. Kentucky is just always kind of their get right. Will Stoops looks like he knows it's over. He looks done. Maybe he's not as motivated anymore as he was coming into the year.
Get ready to learn distillery, buddy.
He knows it. He's doing well. I think, at least. I don't know. I haven't checked back in. I don't know if that's a publicly traded company. I haven't been able to check in on that. But one more real home game left. It's against Florida with an interim coach. Once upon a time, beating Florida meant a lot for Mark Stoops. And it's one of the things that you can't tell the story of Mark Stoops without talking about him overcoming the historic failures against Florida. And at the same time, beating a team like that will instead just say more about where Florida's at than probably where Kentucky's at. And I just, at this point, I don't really know what Mitch Barnhart's waiting on. I don't really know. Like you're trying to do right by like this coach who is going to be on those record books for a really, really long time. Like I get it from that standpoint, but man, it's brutal. And I think one more time, just one more time, especially as A&M was doing what it was doing, we need to bring up the sliding doors. We have to. Elko versus Stoops is going to be an underrated SEC storyline of the 2020s. But it could be one of the most telling developments because especially if A&M becomes a yearly playoff team under Elko. If they revert back to 8-4 after this season, then obviously we won't spend a whole lot of time thinking about that. But Elko, since he's been hired at A&M, is 10-3 against SEC competition, and he was considered the backup plan. And Mark Stoops, it falls apart, and Mark Stoops, tail between his legs, returns to Lexington, only to go 1-12 against SEC competition. It is for A&M potentially one of the all-time dodged bullets because it would have been, maybe a different version of Mark Stoops at A&M than what we're seeing at Kentucky, whatever. It still feels like a massive dodge bullet for a guy that just doesn't seem how to remember to win SEC games. And it's pretty obvious watching it play out in such decisive fashion like this.
At 1-12, I mean, like, we've seen it, right? Like, we've seen it with our eyes. I know it happened, but it almost feels like it's too bad to be true. Like, the fact that you can add those two records that's still below 500, you have a 10-3 record in there at the SEC is maddening. And if you're a Kentucky fan, I guess you're just, at this point, excited for Mark Pope. You're here for the vibes. Maybe Cutter Bullies is something to get excited about. But this is hell. This is horrible.
College football hell. I don't know if they're going to be in it at season's end, but man, and it just kind of makes you wonder, like, if he had felt like he has one foot out the door after the A&M thing fell apart, should you have just sailed off into the sunset instead of coming back?
We've talked about this man, and I think number one, pride for college football coaches is such a big deal, and number two, tens of millions of dollars will do that. And just to put a bow on
True.
this, you could imagine this. My friends I have the Kentucky group chat with, where I'm the only LSU fan, seeing the Simpsons gif of them patting the couch of like "Welcome to Hell" to me as both of our teams were getting blown out. Really stunning visual. Where I'm like, us and Kentucky are kind of the same. We're both in hell. This is crazy, but at least have some coaching changes. We'll have the ability to reset the deck because that's what it'll take for Kentucky. You could just sim the rest of the season. No more reason to watch any more of these games, honestly.
Basketball season is here for Kentucky,
Yep.
right? And meanwhile, Tennessee, who would probably not like to think about baseball season, um, they host Oklahoma. Battle of two lost teams. That's a playoff elimination game next weekend. Heupel will get a chance to end OU's playoff path. I know that's not as Toby Keith as last year, but if
It's
you had told
close.
Heupel coming in, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Of the things that you can potentially do to your alma mater, that might be even sweeter than last year if he can get it done. Good bounce back for this Tennessee offense, which I'll continue to bang the drum for. Like I think it's really really good, and I do think that having all the non-offensive touchdowns really helps. They have 5 non-offensive touchdowns this year, 5 defensive touchdowns. I want to say maybe even more. Yeah, I think they might have a special teams one mixed in there as well. But yeah, Tennessee not to be pushed around. Good bounce back win
On
for the
offense.
Vols. So okay, so my buddy Bronson, one last thing before we go here. My buddy Bronson, he goes to one Tennessee game every year because one of his good buddies who played at Purdue now lives in Knoxville, and he goes to like pretty much every Tennessee game. And Bronson was like, he always like picks my brain. He's like, give me some discussion topics. I'm like, all right, here's what you need to say. Man, if they could just get healthy at corner. If they could just get healthy at corner, oh, that defense is rough, man. Like, I can't wait to see this offense light it up, but is this defense going to be able to get enough stops? Are they going to allow too many big plays in the passing game? If you say that, you'll find your way around a Tennessee tailgate just fine.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, this style of football is very conducive to drinking. Trust me, I lived through 2023 LSU, where it's like our offense is unstoppable, our defense is terrible. So it's a fun
You're
time.
hurting right now,
It's a
man.
fun time. I would say it's way better than being in one of these grind out games where it's like, I'm gonna hit the rest of you. This game's gonna be on for a long time. All right.
Will, you're hurting. I get it. I totally get it, man. Been there. We've all been there. Better days are ahead for you. Better days are ahead. Look, week 10, double digit week. That's coming up next week. So November will be the next time that we're watching SEC football on our televisions. The season's almost over for you. That's good, right?
I mean, I'm loving the season. That's the thing, man. I wish the season would never end. If I had to watch a bunch of terrible LSU losses, I'd do it every week because that's my takeaway from this weekend is I think college football is just the best product it's ever been. And I hate to do that. It's not particularly close, but it does not feel particularly close. It feels like these teams that used to be dead in the water, roll over, like getting pushed around all game. Is like you look at the news window and you're like, wow, this is compelling, unique football in each team. And
Yep.
I'm just so fired up for this era. Being Mr. Boomer curmudgeon, regular season doesn't matter guy, it's like feels like the regular season on a week by week basis feels like it matters just as much as ever.
Yeah, one of my buddy Ben, who's an Iowa guy, he was saying like, yeah, it does kind of feel like maybe the regular season doesn't quite matter as much. But then I kind of jumped in and said, but still, the sport is awesome. The sport is at such a good place right now, and you're right, missing it yesterday in terms of like not being able to lock in for a full day. I was itching. Not quite a college football addict, but maybe maybe I am just a little bit. I'm okay admitting that. All right, that's a pod. That'll do it. Please, please, please leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the SDS Pod, at Saturday Down South, at CJ Rivera, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.